All right, followers, I just want to let you in on a great website if you're a fan of Michigan, UofMDiehards.com. They got great blogs, they got great articles dedicated to all things University of Michigan. They reach out to get great interviews from writers at the Bleacher Report. They break down a lot of the games across all sports. Check out UofMDiehards.com. It's a great website, and DocNJock, check them out. You see them on our Twitter page all the time. They're objective. They look at things from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different angles. It's a great website. It's a good follow. So you can follow them on Facebook. Give their Facebook page a like at UofMDiehards. I find myself going there quite a bit.
I'm Go Blue, baby.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
All day, every day.
Good morning, my neighbors!
That's why these two guys here, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood.
The microphones are hot. Doc and Jock are here in the studio, ready to deliver another great podcast. Welcome to the Detroit Sports Podcast, our weekly podcast dedicated to all things Detroit sports. I am the Doc, John Macaroon.
You're the future of our business.
Joining me is my co-host, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Cause what's happening, man? I know you've been really working hard at your sister's new place, and you're putting it down, laying the tiles, getting your hands dirty. You're a good man, and your sister's got a good brother. What's happening?
Lucky I still have 10 digits on my hand, almost lopped off a pinky with a miter saw. But other than that, I'm good to go, bro. I think we've got playoffs on the horizon here. I think we're going to maybe talk about these Lions and possibly a playoff berth. Playoffs.
With the Lions?
Oh, yeah. I told you early on this season, I said it all comes down to the Thanksgiving Day game. If they can sit there and they can beat Chicago, I think then we can have a legitimate discussion about these Detroit Lions and the upcoming playoffs.
Because the problem is this. The Lions don't play in the league by themselves. They're playing in the NFC, where 8-4 only gets you the wild card. There is a scenario where they could finish 10-6 and not make the playoffs. It's really tough being a Lions fan, knowing that, in essence, we got to win out to secure the playoff spot. And that means going into Green Bay, Lambeau Field, the last game of the season, and trying to take down the red-hot Green Bay Packers. That's going to be a tough ask. And let's not put the cart before the horse. The Lions still got to play Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Chicago on the road before they even get to Green Bay. So we're going to get a chance to chat about the Lions' recent play and what their playoff future looks like. We're going to play a round of Jock Jams. I got questions lined up, and the Jock is ready to handle them. In the second half of the show, we have to tackle the abomination that is the University of Michigan. They played a very decent half versus Ohio State, but just like their season, in the end, they were not able to walk away with the victory, despite Michigan fans doing your job, knocking out Ohio State quarterback Barrett, knocking him out for the season. You basically, in essence, ruined Ohio State's season.
We ain't going, they ain't going. That's how this works. I'm Go Blue, baby.
And it's time to start really looking at this season, what's really happened, and where is this program. Their very well-respected football program at the University of Michigan has taken a hit this season, and we're going to look at where they go from here, who are the A and B choices for head coach. Can a new coach help the University of Michigan return to prominence back there in Ann Arbor? Because these last few seasons have really taken a toll on the program and have taken a toll on the respect that Michigan once had. They're looked at now as maybe a second-tier program not one that's capable of winning national titles year in and year out. And with the challenging SEC, it's going to be tough to get back there, and we're going to talk all about it. Cuz, you ready to kick this bad boy off? Episode 69.
Ah, 69. It's a good time.
Is that number relevant in any kind of way?
Yeah, you do me, I do you.
Homie, don't play that.
But you don't do me, and I'm not going to do you.
What the hell is that about?
But if you're a girl, what's up, ladies?
Very funny, Jock. All right, cuz the Lions on Thanksgiving played a very total game on offense after the first quarter. When the first quarter happened, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. Alshon Jeffrey, who's on my fantasy team, is going off. The first 2 possessions, touchdowns, and the Lions are down 14-0, and everyone's like, oh no.
And the Jock's freaking out because he benched Jay Cutler.
And 15 quick points, and Doc is talking trash on Twitter like, ha, your guy dropped a quick 15, who needs it? Jay Cutler started off great. Once the Lions broke that consecutive drive streak without a touchdown, the offense was off and running. And it's tough to analyze because Chicago is such a horrible team that right now I really feel like they've given up on their coach. They played so bad after that first touchdown by Calvin that I'm surprised Trestman survived. He's been getting rolled lately. What has been the staple of the Bears in recent years? Strong defense. Yes, they are riddled with injuries, and they sustained one early in that game. But the Lions handled their business. They got off the schneid in terms of, I think it was 25 straight possessions without a touchdown, and boom, 3 straight possessions in the end zone. And it looked good. It looked proficient. We finally got a glimpse of what the offense should look like game in and game out. And it's just really sad that we can't play similar to Green Bay and New England in terms of just rolling up numbers, playing well on offense, and getting the job done. But overall, we got to 8-4. We're sitting very good in the playoff picture in the NFC. Going forward, it's going to be great down the stretch to see, is this the same old Lions? Can they maintain the momentum, win their games at home, and break through and get into the playoffs?
I think this game was extra importantly. I can't express how important this game was, not just for these Lions, but for their aspirations to play in the playoffs. The Lions needed this win in order to actually have legitimate conversations about them making the playoffs. And you're right, if they get to 10-6, there is the possibility that they won't make the playoffs. They might be left out. But I do believe that this team sits there and they keep their home field advantage, and I think they win their next 2 games, and I think they go to Chicago and they win that game. So that sets them up at 11-4. I think at 11-5, if they lose that game in Lambeau Field, I think that they can still make the playoffs at 11-5. But they needed to win this game against the Chicago Bears, and they did that. The offense looked great. Defense looked questionable those first two series on defense, but they sat there, turned around, and they played a hell of a game. It was exciting to watch this offense finally come alive. You got to realize, though, that it was against a very bad and weak Chicago Bear defense, but it was nice to see what this offense has the potential to do. They just need to do it on a more consistent basis going forward.
Now, how cool was that 2 brothers got to play against each other on Thanksgiving, the Fuller brothers? And after the game, it was kind of noted that the Lions, Corey Fuller, when he was interviewed by the media, was like, I told Calvin to go hard at my brother. In the end, wow, he really torched him. He lit him up good. And Kyle Fuller around here was getting a lot of love because, he was making plays. In his first game, he had a couple interceptions. And for us, we're stuck, trying to analyze what the hell's going on with Ebron. And Calvin took him to school and showed him, hey, I'm the man. I haven't lost a step. He really stepped up his game, got open, and he made some outstanding catches. Really put this team on his back and said, listen, let's go. I'll carry this offense. Matthew Stafford, get me the damn ball. And he lit up Fuller. And I like that. And he really helped spark the offense. What was the best way to explain Calvin Johnson's performance? Did he raise his game, or was Chicago's secondary and defensive scheme just not up to par in terms of matching up with one of the best NFL receivers?
Is Calvin Johnson returning coincidence with the DocNJock curse? I mean, we sat there, we tweeted out him missing on the back of a milk carton because he hasn't shown up in a few games. The next thing you know, the guy shows up and he goes gangbusters. I don't know if Calvin Johnson is back, and I don't know if this is the real deal with Calvin Johnson. It looks really good as you sit there and you basically go against the number 12 pass defense, But I don't know. Kyle Fuller's a very good player. He's a rookie, though. You just took a rookie to task. Go take Patrick Peterson to task, then come talk to me. So I'm not ready to say that Kelvin Johnson is back and Kelvin Johnson is here to basically lift these Lions up and carry them into the playoffs. I think it was nice to see Kelvin Johnson actually be productive and do a lot of good things. Rewatching that game, because I watched a little bit of it again last night. Rewatching that game, this offense has to get Golden Tate more involved earlier in this game. You can't wait to the midpoint of the second quarter to start getting Golden Tate involved. Golden Tate is a key component of this offense. You got to get him the ball, let him move the ball up the field. He does a great job with yards after the catch. That's going to free Kelvin up, and you got Kelvin, he's your Randy Moss. He takes the top off the defense. So if you can get the ball to Golden Tate earlier, I think that's going to open things up for Calvin, and then we can sit there and we can have a legitimate conversation about Calvin possibly being back. He looked very good against Kyle Fuller, and he looked very good against that Bears secondary. I'm not 100% sure, though, and I'm not ready to push all in and say Calvin Johnson is back, and he is the Calvin Johnson that we had 2 and 3 years ago.
And the offense after the first quarter, once they got rolling, was much better. They got into rhythm. Matthew Stafford had command of the offense. The running game got going. Joique Bell with a couple touchdowns. And it looked like they had an efficient game plan set up and ready to execute. But the question is this. Versus better defenses, can the Lions really push through and take the steps needed in order to play well on offense? And it just looks like this team is a team that can maybe eke into the playoffs and play well enough to compete in a playoff game. I just don't know. I'm not confident enough. If they're not playing at Ford Field, what would happen if a 6-10 New Orleans team wins the South over there? Someone's got to win that division in one of the worst divisions ever. Right now, I think Atlanta and New Orleans are both like have 5 or 6 wins. So right now, you're potentially looking at a division winner with 7 or 8 wins, and the Lions could be 10-6 going as a wild card into that environment. How awful, how pitiful would it be if the Lions are 10-6 and they go to New Orleans, who I think is the favorite to really take that division down, to go into New Orleans and not play well versus the Saints, not keep up offensively. The issues that have to be fixed, I don't know if they can be fixed this season, because it's tough to change schemes when you're in a season. So they just kind of have to make minor adjustments. But is this offense good enough as they stand now to compete in the playoffs? It's close. It's going to be like one of those things where, can we call upon Matthew Stafford to make a late fourth quarter drive in a playoff game? That will be interesting to see, because the defense is playing well, keeping us in games, and this team's success is going to hinge on how well this offense responds in the next 4 games. We can't sit here and just assume that, you know what, these Lions are going to win versus Tampa. They're going to win versus Minnesota. They're both playing a little bit better. Minnesota has, started to pick up the pace. They're getting wins. They beat Carolina. Minnesota defeated the Panthers, whereas you did not. And it's very important that we don't lose sight of the fact that the Lions have to play well week in, week out, just to get to 10-6.
I want to correct myself real quick. I said that the Chicago Bears had the 12th ranked pass defense. It's actually the 30th, so my fault on that. I misspoke. I meant 30th. I said 12th. But I think going forward towards the playoffs, I think this offense can produce, and I think this offense can play well. I think they just have to find the right correlation between the pass plays that they run and the run plays that they run. You can't sit there and you can't put Joique Bell out there and you can't run it first and second down straight up the gut. You can't do it. It's not, your offensive linemen are so beat up and so battered right now that you've got secondary players in there who just aren't getting the push off the line. So the next best thing to do would be to either throw a screen pass. And I know you don't have Reggie Bush, so that kind of hampers that, but you got a guy like Golden Tate. Throw a screen pass or a bubble screen to Golden Tate. Let him sit there and let him move the ball up the field. You come out and you do that on first down. Now you've got that defense on their heels. You can now then give the ball to Joique Bell and let him run the ball. Or you can do that with Theo Riddick. I really liked what the Lions did on that Thanksgiving Day game because they got Theo Riddick a little bit more involved in the game. And you can kind of see what was kind of talked about coming into this season, how he kind of is that factor back. He's got a little bit of speed, a little bit of power, and he can do a lot of different things. He's almost that Darren Sproles player that he was compared to earlier this year. So I think you keep getting him involved. When Reggie Bush finally comes back, if he finally comes back, at this point, point, I just want to chop the guy's ankle off and put a robotic foot on him and call it a day. But if Reggie Bush comes back, that's going to give you a little bit more speed on the outside right there, and I like that. Here's a question for you, though. And Jim Caldwell kind of addressed it in his Monday press conference. Would you think about bringing in Ray Rice?
Now, I think the talk is that Jim Caldwell said, and the Lions have said as an organization, we're not really interested in bringing in a Ray Rice. And the tough part is this. Unfortunately, distractions in an NFL locker room tend to kill teams. And this would be one of the biggest distractions at the worst possible times. And the other factor that I hate to point out, I would have taken him had he been the Ray Rice of old. But it just looked like, based on the film, that based off of last season, that his skills have declined, that one of the most tough physical positions in the league has really hindered him and has really caused a decline in his skills. So that really more than the video. The video is atrocious and it's very disturbing, and he needs a lot of work to earn the respect back of the league. But in terms of his ability to contribute to this team, I don't think you get more from him than you would from Reggie Bush. In terms of Reggie Bush has speed, he has a unique skill set in terms of the passing game, and he can bring you some if he gets on the field. I know it's just really tough with Reggie Bush in that he's not on the field. He's not a gamer. I think that Riddick and Jock Bell bring more to the table than a Ray Rice would at this time. So when you weigh all the factors, I just think that it's not in their best interest. But I do think in the offseason, the final piece that may help this Lions team over the hump to get to a Super Bowl is maybe making a splash for a DeMarco Murray if he's not franchised by Dallas, or potentially rolling the dice on making a move for Adrian Peterson. If you get 1 or 2 good seasons out of him, you really could make a push. You really could make a push for a long playoff run with a guy like Adrian Peterson. So that would be more of my interest. But Ray Rice, I don't think has a future. I don't think Ray Rice is going to be in the league for the foreseeable future.
I'm going to disagree with you here. All right. James Ahedebo, who basically is a leader on that defense, has come out and said that this team would welcome him with open arms. Dominic Raiola, who's a leader on that offense, has said that we would welcome him with open arms. I think a guy like Ray Rice, you could bring him in.
It's not about you're right. It's not about the boys. It's about the circus and the media around it.
I understand that, but you can insulate your team, and you can limit what the media has access to. You can limit their time with Ray Rice. You can do that. I think you bring him in. He's got fresh legs. He hasn't done anything in the last 13 weeks. You got a guy like Reggie Bush who's out there gimping around, can't play. You've got guys like Jock Bell and Theo Riddick who have been leaned on heavily all season because they're trying to pick up the load and the slack from Reggie Bush. You bring a guy like Ray Rice in, and yes, he's not the 3-time Pro Bowler, and he's not the guy who put up 4,000-yard rushing seasons. He's not that guy anymore. But he is a guy who I think you can get some mileage out of, and you can get a little bit out of. You basically bring him in on a prorated 1-year deal, saying, hey, this is how much we're going to give you. This is kind of your turn to kind of test where you are at, see where you're at, see if you still got it. And we'll kind of go from there maybe next season. If you still got something in the tank, maybe we'll bring you back. But I think you bring him in, and I think he helps boost this run game. I think he helps make this run game that much better, because you're not getting anything out of this run game right now. You're really not. Yeah, it was nice Jock Bell got a couple touchdowns, but it was against a really bad defense. Against the better teams, and when you get into the playoffs, you have to be able to run the ball. You're going to have to, if you get a lead, you got to be able to kill the clock, and you got to be able to possess the ball, and at certain points, you got to sit there and you got to be able to break a big run off to sit there and help move the ball down the field. You know, they're getting basically 2.5, maybe 3 yards a carry off their running backs, and that's not good enough right now. And if these Lions want to make the playoffs and they want to make some noise in the playoffs, they really are going to either have to try to be first in the NFC North, or they're going to have to work for that 5th playoff spot. I think if they are the 6th playoff spot, they're going to have a really tough road to hoe, because you're going to have to go to the likes of Philadelphia, and you're going to have to try to win on the road there. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's much more difficult instead of playing a team like the Atlanta Falcons, who currently are the worst team to make the playoffs with a 5-7 record, or possibly a New Orleans Saints team, who I agree with you, I think are the better team out of that division in the NFC South. But you're going to have to try to get into that 5th spot, or you're going to have to sit there and try to overtake Green Bay. And that's where it comes down to that game in Lambeau Field. But I think these Lions do make the playoffs. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to put my nuts on the table, and I'm going to say that the Lions make the playoffs. Even if they go 10-6, I still think they make the playoffs. I think they sit there and they beat out a team like Seattle. I think they beat out a team like possibly Arizona, who looks like they're slipping backwards since that win over Detroit. I think that the Lions have enough, and I think they get in there. And I think as soon as they can possibly get some of these pieces back that get healthy, a guy like a Nick Fairley, when he comes back, a guy like a Reggie Bush, when he comes back, the healthier this team is later in the season, the better off for them.
So you bring in a Ray Rice. So then how does the offense look? You give Jock Bell less touches? Does Theo Riddick get less passes? Let's look what the Lions did versus Chicago. Jock Bell got over 20 carries, around 91 yards, and they used Theo Riddick in the screen game in the role of a Reggie Bush. So they tried to keep the Chicago defense honest by pounding the rock. Versus other teams, they haven't been as successful running the ball, and that's due to the inconsistent play and the injuries on the offensive line. But going forward, you inserted Ray Rice. Then are you saying right now a fresh Ray Rice is better than a Jock Bell? No, in my opinion, no.
I guess so.
I can't say that.
That long pause is an I guess so. I would have to see what Ray Rice brings to the table. I'm not sure what Ray Rice is bringing to the table. I remember what I seen in the preseason, where I seen him breaking off a few long runs before all this kind of came out and all this was going on. He looked like he was a little bit better. He looked like he was much better health than he was the season before. I just know that now, 13 games into this season, you've got guys who are going to be tired, guys who are going to be banged up, guys who are going to be nicked up. You can bring a fresher set of legs in, and you might be able to get a little bit more mileage out of them for the foreseeable future, which basically consists of 4 more weeks and then possibly a playoff run. So all you need is 5 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, if we're lucky enough to make it to a Super Bowl. And that's what you want. You're basically going to kind of push in and you're going to say, hey, we're going to make a run with this guy for the next 7 weeks. Do I know if he's better than Jock Bell? I don't know, but I'd bring him in and I'd try him out, is all I'm saying.
I respect your opinion, but do you think that Ray Rice finds himself in the league by the time the NFL playoffs start? Does a team roll the dice? A team like maybe the Saints or a team that may look at their roster and be like, you know what? Ray Rice may be a piece that helps us get to the next level, maybe like in Arizona or New Orleans. What do you think?
Why not? Why not? You can bring him in on the cheap. You can pay him a prorated contract. You can basically say, hey, here's your one chance. And what's the harm? You don't have to guarantee him any money. So you bring him in, he tries out, you sign him to a deal, right? You sign him to basically league minimum because nobody else wants him, right? Sign him to league minimum. And if he doesn't work out, you give it 2 weeks. It doesn't work out, you cut him. Why? It doesn't hurt. I really do believe that it's a no harm, no foul type of deal. You bring him in, you try him out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And you haven't lost anything. You didn't have to give anything up to get him. You know, you're not really going to hamper your salary cap because you don't have to sign him to a whole lot of money. I think I just talked you into this.
No, it wouldn't happen in my locker room. I just think that I would roll the dice with the pieces that I have. I give respect to Jock Bell, and you never know. Reggie Bush may man up and play 4 straight games and help us get to the playoffs. You never know. So I just think that if the Lions didn't have somewhat of depth at that position, then he may be someone you could look at. But right now, it's just that you have 3 guys on the roster, and I don't think you're going to make a move to let someone go to bring in a Ray Rice. So I don't think it's a good fit, and I'm interested to see who rolls the dice and what the reaction is going to be. Does the league forgive a guy that on video assaulted his wife? Does the league accept him back with open arms?
Oh, dude, the league will. The whole NFL, it's a whole sham, dude.
It's a new league,
whole bunch
though.
Of criminals and bad guys.
Just 1 season ago, I agree with you.
Playing for basically the highest bidder, dude. That's what the NFL is.
1 season ago, I agree with you. Right now, in this day and age, the pressure is so intense. While owners and teams are not going to openly say it, they don't want that nonsense. And they may give them, a team like the Raiders, a team like Arizona, a team that needs some talent at running back may do it. I just don't see it this year. I think he sits out this season and may get an open tryout next year.
A little food for thought real quick. Looking at the top 10 teams, these are all teams who have a legit shot at possibly making a playoff in the NFC. Detroit is the only team that has question marks at the running back spot. And by question marks, I mean they're basically not Pro Bowl players or they're not guys that you can basically hang your hat on. The only other team that I think comes in kind of close with maybe a question mark would be Arizona. I don't think Atlanta's going to make a move because they've got Steven Jackson and that offense likes to throw the ball. So I don't think they would bring Ray Rice in. As far as it goes in the AFC, he really doesn't have a shot to catch on with any team. Everybody's basically got running backs. I mean, your 10th team in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've got Le'Veon Bell, who's basically a top 2 running back in the league at this point in his career. So I don't really see him latching on with anybody in the AFC. So the only team really out there with a viable playoff chance that I could see him hooking up with would be your Detroit Lions.
Now, Doc and Jock definitely criticize players when they're not playing well. We keep it real. We look at plays critically, but we have to give praise to players that are dominating on the field and are getting better. Guy on the defensive line has just been outstanding this year. Ziggy Ansah really has grown up before our eyes. And cause last year he was playing around 271 pounds, this year has gained muscle, playing at 280 and hasn't lost any speed or any quickness and is terrorizing the opponents. And I just think that Ziggy Ansah needs a little bit more respect and needs to be talked about a little bit more in terms of the fact that he is really helping anchor this number 1 defense. And we really haven't looked in depth at why this defense has been number 1, but a significant piece and a guy that deserves some credit and some cheers from the Detroit Sports Podcast is Ziggy Ansah. He's a player with not a lot of experience playing football, and in 2 seasons has really made an impact. We're not talking about him like, well, if he develops, if he understands the schemes. He's come right in, has adjusted amazing to a new defensive coordinator. Yes, Cunningham is still part of this staff in terms of an advisor role, but he has responded excellently to Terrell Austin's defense. And without Ziggy Ansah, this defense, I don't think, will be ranked in the top 5 in terms of their ability to stop the run, pressure the quarterback, and handle their business. And I really do respect that, and I really do want to give props to a guy who I think is a budding superstar, could be one of those players that we see be the anchor of this defense for a long time.
Most definitely. He leads the team in sacks, and he leads the team in forced fumbles as well. He is a large reason why this defense is performing as well as it is. He is part of the reason why they get to the quarterback. Yes, Ndamukong Suh draws double teams, and Ziggy Ansah is kind of excelling because Suh is drawing those double teams, but Ansah has to get to the quarterback, and he has stepped in. He has basically showed up. When he was originally drafted, I was scratching my head like, why are we taking this guy? What's going on? Why don't we go out and get a guy like Barkevious Mingo? And much to my surprise, and I'm ecstatic to say that Ziggy Ansah has basically fit in perfectly with this Detroit Lions scheme and is playing exceptionally well. I'm very happy that we have him and that they drafted him where they drafted him. The guy is a stud. He's a freak. And like you said, he's kind of the reason why this defense is doing as well as it's doing, because he gets to the quarterback, he forces the ball loose, and he basically disrupts everything that's going on offense for the other team.
Just checking the Twitter mailbag here. I love it. If you guys follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, it's a good follow. We definitely tweet out while we're doing the show. And I asked the question, is Ray Rice better than Joique Bell? And at Just Win Detroit tweeted us, no. He had one 100-yard game last year with an average yards per carry of 3.2. Not worth the baggage. I'll pass. And I think that's going to be the overall attitude that you get from the majority of people, and that's why you don't get a guy like Ray Rice. But you are absolutely right. We have to give respect to the defense. They are carrying this team. It's very important that this team continue to play at this level and to get better. That's the key, and that's the question going forward that we will watch as we play Tampa Bay, as we play Minnesota, as we go on the road to Chicago. Does this team improve? Because right now I kind of feel like they're at a good level. They're playing good. They're playing competitive football. And it's great to see that this season I feel like our blood pressure has been very good because the team has played well. We haven't gone off as much. I mean, literally by last year we would have spewed off at least half a dozen times. Now we're talking about things more in depthly. We're looking at, can this team take the next step in terms of being a playoff team that wins? So we're climbing the ladder. It's a good thing to talk about. I think that the Lions need to improve, and that will be the key. That's going to be what I'm looking for in the next couple games. That's going to be the attitude and the premise that I take. So good talk. It's going to be a great, great game versus Tampa Bay, one that I feel like could be matchups in our favor. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to play a round of Jock Jams. Jock is in his seat, ready to bring the noise. Stay with us.
This is the Detroit Pistons dancing usher. My name is Shannon. And when I'm not at the Palace, I'm listening to Detroit Sports Podcast. Log in, listen in, have some fun with us. Love this group. Love the station.
You're the future of our business, and I know when you guys have a podcast like this, our future is in good hands.
All right, cuz, you ready to play a round of Jock Jams? You ready? Ready for the heat?
Let's do it.
All right, Sunday, I was excited. 4:25, the game of the week, Green Bay versus New England. All the talk, all the hype lived up to it. It was a great game, but in the end, Green Bay at home was just a little bit too much for New England to handle. Overall, your impressions of that game, and was that a preview of this season's Super Bowl?
If I got to put a percentage on it, I'm going to probably say 90%. I think it was nice to see kind of how Green Bay stacks up, so we kind of know what we have to face. New England's got a very good team, a lot better than where they were to start the season. Green Bay has a much better team than where they were to start the season. Both of these quarterbacks can play out of their mind, and they do a great job utilizing the tools that are at their disposal, and they do a phenomenal job of being efficient utilizing those tools. I think there's a great shot that Green Bay and New England play for the Super Bowl come February. Overall, my impressions from the game, Detroit's got some work to do. That's really what I took out of it. The Lions have some work to do, especially if they're looking to catch Green Bay and take control of the NFC North. This was the one game that I thought Green Bay could lose and would allow Detroit a little bit of ground, a little bit of room to kind of catch up to them and kind of hold on all the way up until that game at Lambeau Field, where they could sit there and they could go head-to-head, and basically it's up for grabs for the NFC North. At this point, Detroit now has to go into Lambeau Field and beat the tar out of Green Bay in order to basically capture the NFC North. So I think there's a great shot that this could be the Super Bowl. I think both quarterbacks and both teams have exceptional quarterbacks and good pieces that are around them that they know how to utilize to sit there and make everybody else better.
All the marbles on the line. If that's the Super Bowl matchup, who would you take?
With the way Aaron Rodgers has been playing lately, I'm going to have to go Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I love Tom Brady, but Tom Brady hasn't looked real good in the past couple Super Bowls. His team hasn't looked real good in the past couple Super Bowls. I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers.
Switching gears, I know you've been chomping at the bit to talk Red Wings hockey. We've been really focused on the Lions in-depthly, but I know you've been watching. I know you've been excited by what you've been watching. Talk a little bit about the Red Wings and their recent play in the month of November. They're going to play a lot of games upcoming at home, a lot of opportunities to pick up points, and this month should be a significant month. Your overall thoughts on the Red Wings' awesome start to the 2014 season?
I think it's nice to see the young kids come in and contribute. And I think a lot of their success can basically be pointed to 4 different categories where the Red Wings are excelling. 1, goals per game. They are top 5 overall. 2, power play percentage. They are top 10 overall. They're actually 6th. And their penalty kill is top 5 overall. Also, you've got Jimmy Howard at the back end, basically in the top 10 of goals against average. So I think all those things kind of culminate to this team basically playing above where we expected them to be. On top of that, you got guys like Gustav Nyquist, Thomas Tatar, you got Pavel Datsyuk. All these guys have the possibility to be a 20-goal scorer this season, and you're getting that contribution. That's something that you didn't have last season. You didn't have a 20-goal scorer last season. So now you've got possibly 3 guys. Now add to the mix Henrik Zetterberg possibly getting 20, and maybe even Justin Abelkader, who has been sidelined with a shoulder separation for the next 2 weeks, possibly getting 20. You might have 5 guys on this team with the possibility of scoring 20 goals this season, which is outstanding, something that we haven't had in a long, long time. And I think all those factors kind of contribute to this team playing as well as they are playing right now. They're one of the best teams in the East right now, and they're basically just rolling. I expect them to get wins against the Panthers. I expect them to get wins against the Dallas Stars. I expect them to get wins against the New York Rangers and basically anybody else that they face. So I expect good things moving forward for the Wings as long as they can stay healthy.
As everyone knows, I love the Twitter. Our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast is one of the most interactive Twitter pages, and I definitely browse others. A point of contention that maybe some people did not mention but caught my eye. In 5 games, Ouellette, the defenseman, had a goal, an assist, and was a +3. The team earned 8 out of 10 points, but he was sent down to Grand Rapids. And a lot of people are saying, ooh, this might be shades of the past where you're not playing. The roster does not have all its best players at the big club. Your thoughts, and do you think, have you been in agreements with the moves that have been made early on this season?
No, not at all. I think there's been some moves that have been made that are highly questionable. I think this goes back to the postseason and some of the issues I've had with Kent Holland and some of his moves that he's made. That being said, I think for what is best for that player, for Xavier Ouellette, I think it is best for him to probably go to Grand Rapids and get a little bit more seasoning and then maybe bring him back up later in the year and try to fit him in there. He's not going to get the amount of playing time that he would get here, so why not send him down? You have him on a two-way contract. He's protected, so you don't have to worry about losing him. So send him down, let him get a little bit more seasoning, let him play almost 20 minutes a game. That way when you can bring him up later on in the year, when other guys are either tired or beat up or guys just need a rest because the season's long and it's hard and it's a stretch and it's a grind. So you can bring him up and he'll be fresh and he'll be able to sit there and he'll be in great shape too. And he'll have that little bit of an extra edge and he'll still be hungry. So I don't have a problem with sending him down. Overall, I have a problem with some of the moves that have been made this season. And I don't really like them sending the way they've done things with Dan Cleary has really bothered me. Just really irked me because I feel like you lose a couple players because you don't want to send Cleary down. You can't send Cleary down. I don't know why Cleary's here. The guy's basically a DNP every single game. So I just don't understand the issue with Dan Cleary. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Exactly, and you're willing to lose Nestrasil and keep Dan Cleary. And the thinking, I think, that maybe of concern to the Red Wings was they didn't want to lose Lashoff in waivers the same way, so they were willing to send Ouellette to Grand Rapids. But that's just the biggest problem. I think that the Wings need to consistently field the best team that's available. And in terms of Ouellette's play, I don't think he deserved to go to Grand Rapids. I think he deserved to continue to play and to continue to play against the best in the league. And I think he would have shined. And I know it sucks because of the numbers game and things like that. And you don't want to, in certain contract situations, if you send someone to the minors, they have to clear waivers. They just can't go back and forth depending on their contract status. So a guy like Lashoff, if you send him to the minors, he'd have to clear waivers. And I don't think that he'd still be with the Wings. So they were willing to send Ouellette to Grand Rapids because he's able to go there. But at the same time, he was producing. And so you don't want to stunt his growth by sending him to the minors. It'll be interesting to see how he responds to going to the minors because going forward, Abdelkader might have a significant shoulder injury. Do we see Anthony Mantha or is it too soon? Is the hype train going a little too fast? Should we pump the brakes and let the dude play in the minors a little bit, or should we just, boom, speed rush his ass up to Detroit?
Pump the brakes. Just pump the brakes. Easy does it, all right?
We all want the latest toy, bro. Black Friday. I want Anthony Mantha. We want to see what this dude can do. 19 years old, 6'3" or whatever he is. He's a
hell
guy
on skates, man.
He's a guy that has a lot of athletic ability and he's stacked, and a lot of people want to see him. Bring his ass here. What's the problem?
Let him get a little bit of seasoning in the AHL, all right? I mean, he basically went from major junior hockey. I think he's with Grand Rapids right now. So let him get a little bit of seasoning, all right? He's a young kid. Don't worry. He's going to step in, and when he does, he'll shine. But it's going to take time, okay? He's a young kid. You know how Ken Holland does these things. He likes to bring them along slowly. If you're not in the freaking minors forever, then you haven't been there long enough. That's how Ken Holland does it. That's how he rolls. And with a young forward, it sometimes works out a little bit better that way. You see what you're getting with Gus Nyquist. You see what you're getting with Thomas Tatar, right? They basically were in the AHL forever, it felt like, right? Felt like forever and a day. Brought them up, and now look at them this year. They are shining. They are beacons of light for this Red Wings team, and they're the guys. They're basically, that's the future. That's the new Euro Twins, right? It's always been, who can we pass the hat off to next, right? We had Sergei and we had Yzerman, right? We had all these guys. Then after Yzerman, who was it? We had it was Pavel and it was Henrik, right? And now who do we pass the hat off? We've kind of been looking for that next step of guys. And right now, it's going to be Gus and Tartar who we're going to pass that hat off to. And you know what? Maybe Anthony Mantha comes in as well, but not this year, not full-time. Maybe next year full-time. He'll probably come up sometime around playoffs. There'll probably be an injury, and he'll be playing like gangbusters down below, and they'll bring him up, and you'll get to see your new toy then. But until then, just be patient, be calm, and just wait for it.
All right, but it's not like us fans here in Detroit to overvalue our talent. So I'm just going to go right to the top. What if he's the next Sidney Crosby, and you got the next Sidney Crosby in the minors? So bring him up. Let's see.
If he was Sidney Crosby, he would be here by now. He's not Sidney Crosby.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty positive he's not Sidney Crosby.
Okay.
He'll be a talent. Don't worry. He'll be good. He'll fit in on this team just right.
Okay.
So just patience, brother, patience.
So far, the theme of the podcast has been pretty positive, but we have to dip into, kind of look at one of the teams that has really kind of embarrassed themselves to start the season. Only 3 wins to start the season. The team just looks horrible. Every time you watch the Pistons, it's really a tough watch. And I peeked in on the Golden State game. Draymond Green comes in and just lights us up. The Pistons aren't playing well cohesively. They can't play well down the stretch. The defense needs a lot of work. Andre Drummond has played a little bit better, but overall, as a unit, the Pistons look like a team that's destined for the lottery. So, cuz we ask it, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but should the Pistons lose 64 for Okafor?
Lose 64 for Okafor. I like how that sounds, but I'm going to tell you no, and here's why. All right? Unless you're willing to give up on Andre Drummond, you're not going to lose 64 for Okafor, all right? Okafor is essentially the same type of guy that you have with Andre Drummond. I think he's a little bit more athletic than Drummond, but you got a 6'11 center. That's exactly what Andre Drummond is. This guy, basically in college, he's averaging 17 points and 7.9 rebounds a game. You sit there and you compare that to a grown man like Andre Drummond, who's averaging almost 12 rebounds a game. All right, I know the points aren't there, and I think that Okafor is a little bit more gifted offensively, but defensively, Andre Drummond's better than Okafor is. So unless you want to sit there and you want to basically tote around 3 centers, that's if you bring Greg Monroe back, because originally you got to remember, Greg Monroe was once a center. You've got him now playing out of position. You brought Andre Drummond in, and when you brought Drummond in, you had to move Monroe, and then you brought Smith in. So you basically got 2 dudes playing out of position who are expected to contribute to this team in Monroe and in Josh Smith. And I'm not going to say it's because of Andre Drummond, but you're basically hanging your hat that Andre Drummond is the second coming of the center. So unless you're going to sit there and you're going to, I don't know, maybe move Andre Drummond out from the center, or if you're going to bring Okafor in and you're going to have him play a power forward, I don't see why you would do that. It doesn't make sense to me, because then you're just going to have a whole bunch of guys playing out of position and playing in unnatural ways. So I just don't see it.
And there's always a picture that you see that's kind of funny is, because of the size of Stan Van Gundy, he just kind of, when things are going wrong, he just stands there with his arms folded, and it looks like he's looking like, oh my God, I knew it was rough, but not this rough.
It's so bad.
He must be looking like, what is going on? What did I get myself into? It's not only coaching, but in the end, it involves a complete rebuild of this team. And he's, I think, realizing when I saw that, like, oh my goodness, I have to rebuild this team. And this team as it is not competitive. So I was like a fanboy, thought we could win 37 to 40 games. But that would be a miracle at the pace we're playing at. So
they're so hard to watch.
Let's recalibrate. Let's reanalyze. As we stand now, Pistons over under 25 wins.
Ooh.
Jock will be like, I think they'll get 25 wins.
No, actually, I'm gonna
under.
I'm going under 25, man.
Yeah.
I'm going under 20. They're so hard. Like, seriously, they're so bad to watch. It's difficult for me to put them on and just sit there and even have them as background noise. It's hard to watch those games. I'm gonna say under 25 games. You know what? If they win 22, I'll be ecstatic.
And you know what stinks is that they choose to suck and stink when there's not really a franchise guy, all world. There's no Derrick Rose, there's no Kobe, there's no LeBron coming out. So you're going to get a guy. Last year, you could have had a Jabari Parker, you could have had some great talent, Andrew Wiggins, and yet you're winning games. So the Pistons don't even know how to tank, quote unquote, correctly. And this year's draft, I mean, really, and that's why a lot of people are talking that the whole NBA stinks, because the guys fundamentally can't play, because the majority of the league, the majority of the rookies are 19 and 20 years old. And that's why it's a tough watch right now. And that's why, really, if you're a fan of basketball, then those are the only people that are really looking in-depthly right now at the Pistons. But I think that if the Spurs are on, if Cleveland's on, and if Miami's on, then potentially, and Oklahoma City and some teams out west like Golden State and the Clippers, outside of maybe half a dozen teams, not really a whole lot of intriguing storylines right now in the NBA. So, and that really sucks for the Pistons fans, because we want a winner, but it's going to be tough go. It's going to be a tough sell for this Pistons team in the 2014-2015 season. Sad to hear. Jock, you knocked it out of the park, man. Home run. Good job.
Thanks, brother.
Stay with us. Doc and Jock have to look at, now, post-mortem, the University of Michigan football program. Stay with us.
I'm Megan McCormick out here in Fox Sports LA, and when I'm not sitting out in the sun, I'm listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast.
You got to check out their stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by it. You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
Thanks, everyone, for your continued support. Thank you to those that clicked on the Amazon banner last week on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We greatly appreciate it. You can support us by going to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Very clean, very easy website to navigate. Thank you to those that contribute to us monthly, and thank you to those that have been bookmarking the Amazon banners and the other banner links. As well, we're working with National Travel Deals. They are a great website that provides great deals on car rentals. So for our followers and listeners, if you click on the nationaltraveldeals.com banner on our homepage, you can get an extra 5% off your next car rental. And their prices are already very, very competitive compared to the national chains. So if you're in the market for a car rental, check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com and get extra savings. And that's what is great about doing this podcast and having the website. We can pass along some great savings to our listeners and followers. So don't pay full price. Check out nationaltraveldeals.com through our website. It's greatly appreciated. All right, cuz Michigan shocked everybody in the first half and was like, what? They held on. They competed. They looked strong. Devin Gardner shook off that stupid interception. He shook off that first turnover and was, boom, ready to go. And he competed all the way up until probably the fourth quarter, that key fourth down play. Fourth down, Greg Madison, bro. What happened? Fourth down and 1.
Was a 44-yard touchdown?
He was trucking. And I'm talking about he was shot out of a cannon. I'm not going to say a whole lot of teams were going to be able to stop that because that dude was shot out of a cannon. Boom, right to the end zone. But the difficult part about that game, you knew that it was going to be a challenge all along the way, but in the end, you just were not able to compete with Ohio State. Even after you knocked out their quarterback, they made the key plays, and Michigan, it just kind of looked like did not have the capability of taking that next step forward, and that's probably the biggest indictment of Brady Hoke, is that now, after so many games, after 11 games in the season, you knock out the Ohio State quarterback, you did not take advantage of your opportunities, and that will probably end the reign as head coach of Brady Hoke.
How scary, though, is Urban Meyer? Basically, probably going to get into the BCS playoff with his third quarterback. His first one goes down to start the year.
With you with that,
he runs with his second one, and now he's got his third one in the mix.
I disagree with that. It may depend on what that quarterback shows in the Big Ten championship game, because there's a committee, and they don't want to put on a dud for a national title.
And I get you on that.
So that's
but
what
the fact that
when he
he's
went down,
even in the talks
with
his third quarterback. Could you imagine what would happen to either Michigan or Michigan State if they were on their third quarterback?
Right.
It would be over. The season would be done. Pack it in.
Now, here's the thing that it's tough to say as Michigan State fans and as Michigan fans. Urban Meyer being in the Big Ten is one of the top 2 bright spots because it gives the conference... Dude, why are you keep passing gas, bro? What the fuck?
Just ripped ass again, bro.
All of a sudden, I'm trying to make a great point on the podcast, and you're ripping farts over there.
That, didn't you?
Oh, loud and clear. Yeah. But getting back to my point, Urban Meyer...
It's all that coffee and protein. I'm sorry.
Urban Meyer being in the Big Ten is a bright spot because it brings the national spotlight to the conference, in a conference that really, in the end, has fallen to depths that they haven't been at before. Totally as a conference, the Big Ten does not rate as well as the other conferences, as the SEC, as other tough conferences. And Urban Meyer being in the conference brings the national spotlight, a national profile to the Big Ten when it's needed. Dude hasn't lost a regular season conference game now in 3 years. Michigan has lost more than that in the last 2 seasons than he has probably in his whole career.
Michigan in the last week has lost more than Urban Meyer's lost in the last, 2 or 3 seasons. So come on now.
Exactly. So it's good to have him in the Big Ten because he's definitely an elite coach who's going to bring in elite talent year after year. And his system just works. And you know what? It just stinks that Ohio State was able to go out there and get their man. And maybe, just maybe, had Michigan let down their guard, if Michigan had been willing to put the bravado away, to check their ego at the door, once Urban Meyer was gone, they should have recognized that's the guy for the program. He should be at Michigan. He's the best coach. So right now, you're basically looking for the next best option. And right now, the Michigan situation is interesting to talk about and interesting to look at because all their eggs are in the Harbaugh basket. Everyone's like, woo woo, Harbaugh comes in, we're gonna win, we're gonna take it to the next level. I don't know. I'm starting to feel like even if he does come, it's not going to happen quickly. He may be able to get him to national relevance, but at this point in time, baby steps. Don't put the cart before the horse. You need to start becoming relevant in the Big Ten. There's, Michigan fans, there's such thing now as a Big Ten title game, and you're nowhere near it. You haven't even sniffed it. And everyone wants Jim Harbaugh. What if Jim Harbaugh doesn't come here? What if he doesn't? Everyone's going to be massively disappointed. And I think everyone is setting themselves up for a big disappointment if you don't
I'm going to channel my inner Lee Corso and say, not so fast, my friend. First off, let's talk about how brutal this season has been on this Michigan program, okay? They're basically left with 7 recruits for next season. Last time I checked, they've got 7 guys who are still committed to this team. So you're basically bringing in nobody next season, unless you go out there and you make a splash with a big-name head coach like a Jim Harbaugh, who everybody feels would be the one guy who could come in, unite everything, fix everything up, make it better. They've got 7 guys coming in next season. Every time they lost a game or every time they were getting shelled, you would go hit Twitter up, and dudes were just like, yeah, I decommitted from Michigan. There was basically a 5-week stretch there where you'd go on Twitter, and it was like the whole incoming class of freshmen for the University of Michigan football team decommitted. All on Twitter. It was ridiculous. But Jim Harbaugh is the one name that all of us have floated out there and all of us have talked about being the one guy who could basically put the Band-Aid on the bullet wound. I've got a list of 5 guys who could probably step in and fix this up, no problem. I'm not going to say that they're going to be Big Ten relevant and go for a national championship or anything along those lines the very first season, but I think over the course of 2 seasons, this could get corrected with these 5 guys. All right, number 1, Jim Harbaugh. All right, we all know what he can do and what the deal is with Jim. He could come in and basically the way he coaches and what he gets out of his players is rivals basically Urban Meyer. He's the one guy who you could basically put in a pit with Urban Meyer and you'd basically give them shards of glass and let them go at it and it'd be a fun watch. Number 2, the Mad Hatter. You bring in Les Miles. I still believe Les Miles wants this job. I think back before Rich Rod was brought here, Les Miles was in here. Everything was done except the ink hadn't dried on the contract yet. And everything got screwed up because of Michigan's AD. All right. The next guy that I like, and this is a guy that we had talked about for the head coaching job for the Lions, David Shaw. He's a predecessor of Jim Harbaugh. He's out there in Stanford. Basically, Michigan is supposedly, I'm doing finger quotes here, the Harvard of the North, right? So he comes from a school that has tough academics, and he coaches a great football program that tends to win. So I like David Shaw. There's Dan Mullen, who is the Mississippi State head coach. You remember what he did when basically in the Gator Bowl in 2011, Rich Rod's last game, where they sat there and they hung, I think it was like 52 points on Michigan? Yeah, he's a pretty damn good coach. He's a power run coach. It's what Michigan wants to do. It's what Michigan does, right? And then I'm going to give you the one guy who could kind of turn a lot of things on its axis in the Big Ten. Just kind of flip everything just a little bit, and it would heat up the rivalry between you and I, sir. And that would be Pat Narduzzi. If you go out there and you could swindle Pat Narduzzi, I don't think this will happen, but if you could swindle him away from D'Antonio, I think then that rivalry gets amped up between Michigan and Michigan State that much more. And I think it becomes that much more intense, especially on the Michigan side. So now you've got Michigan, and you've got Ohio State, and you've got Michigan State. And I think these 3 schools just collide every single season, and it's just basically a death match every year. But I think Narduzzi could come in, and he would install that defense that he wants to install, and that he runs so well over at Michigan State. And he's proven that he can coach up mediocre talent. He's shown that he can coach up guys who are 2-star. When I say 2-star, I don't mean that they're mediocre, but they're not 5-star guys. He can coach these guys up and get them into the NFL. He's done it before. He's done it time and time again. So I think he can coach these guys up, get them talented enough to where they can produce on the field, and he could sit there and he could take basically a handful of guys who have committed and basically turn chicken shit into chicken salad and make these guys competitive next season. And then season number 2, I think that they could sit there and be in the conversation for going to the Big Ten championship game.
Okay, and also, too, I do want to throw in, I respect Dean Lattiser and what his thoughts were. He definitely woke my eyes up to the strong coaching tree from the University of Miami of Ohio. On last week's podcast, gave us a strong list of names from the he gave us a list of strong football coaches that have coached at Miami of Ohio. So Coach Martin could be a guy that could have success. He's a coach that has a history of success at Miami of Ohio. So and other places as well. I agree with you. There's a lot of names out there that could do the job. But right now, the tough part for Michigan is they are looking for a quick fix. And I just think that as fans, I think you need to kind of pump the brakes and relax and understand that the talent right now at the university just isn't good enough. And so realistically, you're not going to get into the Big Ten championship picture for maybe 2 or 3 years at best. I don't think even if Jim Harbaugh comes here next year, is going to go undefeated, get to the Big Ten championship game, win that, get to the national title picture, and win that in his first season.
There's no way to have a quick fix. No, there's no way for a quick fix. It's going to be at least a 2-year deal because they have nobody coming in next season.
That's why I think that the Harbaugh and the Miles hire is one that's the sexy pick, the one that everybody wants, but may not be in the best interest of Michigan because in a couple years, Harbaugh could be gone back to the NFL, could take another high-profile job. What if the Alabama job comes up? You don't think they're just going to be like, boom, we'll go right to them. We'll violate rules. The Michigan Wolverines could be prepping for a huge game. Alabama could be coming to call in. Other teams can, make efforts to reach out to Jim Harbaugh. So he may not be there for 10 years like a D'Antonio. A Les Miles, he's older. And he's had a little bit, with all that talent at LSU, all that talent, with Odell Beckham, with a bunch of players that have been drafted in the NFL, they've only won a very small handful of national titles with Les Miles. So I think
still more than Michigan's won.
That's very true. Very true. But I think
I'll be the first to call my school out, bro.
That's right. This search is going to be the most important search. And likely by the time this podcast airs, Brady Hoke will have been shown the door, and the process will have begun to find the next head coach. And it's going to be very important for the University of Michigan to do their due diligence and not only get the guy that everybody wants, but a guy that can be here for 10 years to build a program. I don't see Michigan as a program that fires their coach one and done or every 4 years. But that's what's happened now with your last 2 hires. You messed up on Rich Rodriguez, whether you agreed with him being a good coach or not, you let him go. You brought in Brady Hoke.
How good does he look now in Arizona?
I just think that he was a bad fit. He was a good coach.
He was a bad fit.
It's a bad fit. People, but
he looks great over in Arizona.
You said it. His defense left a lot to be desired, and it was a culture shock. Michigan was used to giving up 10 points, and they were giving up 40. I don't think Michigan fans were used to trying to win games 45-40. That was like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this that we're looking at? And you're right. That's the point is, and it's a good question, can Michigan find that diamond in the rough? Can they find their Jim Tressel? Can they find a guy that maybe had success at a smaller time level? Can he come up to the big time and bring the university back? That's why Dean Ladderser's comments were very interesting. Chuck Martin, a coach that's had success on a smaller scale, has been at Notre Dame, has coached a team that has done well. So that's interesting to think about. But I just think that right now, the University of Michigan's hire going forward, the next head coach, one of the biggest decisions they've had in a long time, they better not mess it up.
I think with the Jim Harbaugh, if you were to hire Jim Harbaugh, I think you could work it out to where he comes in and you could maybe expect to get 4 or 5 years out of him. And in the meantime, you sit there and you set something up with him where you basically say, you handpick your predecessor. You pick the guy who you want to carry on whatever you have started here. You set that up with him. So that way, when he's ready to make his exit, it's a smooth transition. You don't have to worry about anything. It's all right there. It's all laid out, and you know what you're going to get. Kind of almost real similar to what happened in Stanford with David Shaw. As Harbaugh went out, David Shaw kind of came in, and that school did not miss a beat. They kept playing well, and they kept a high level of athletics and academics. And I think you could do something like that with Harbaugh. And you're right, Les Miles is a little bit older, but I think that guy is talented enough and he's a good enough coach because you see what he's done in the SEC, that he could come here and he could make a dramatic improvement to this team that very first year.
I love Wikipedia. Someone, I'm reading on Twitter, someone has already changed Jim Harbaugh's profile to say that he's the new head coach of Michigan. Wikipedia is great. I've done some silly stuff like that, but everyone wants Harbaugh. But in the end, the important thing is this. In your opinion, should Michigan really look to get back to national relevance? Is that the ultimate goal right now? Is that realistic to think that Michigan can return to national relevance? Look at a team like Michigan State. It's taken them so long to get back to Big Ten relevance, and slowly but surely they're trying to eke their way into national relevance. But the SEC is so strong, so deep from top to bottom. They're crushing each other, whereas Michigan State, Ohio State is one of maybe 3-4 marquee games in the conference because the rest are kind of cupcakes. So it's important now for the Big Ten as a whole to improve. and it's important that Ohio State remains strong and nationally relevant. But is it realistic to think that the next coaching hire will bring Michigan back to national relevance?
I think the end game is national relevance. I think initially, though, you have to start smaller because if you aim too high, you're going to miss. I think you have to start by winning the Big Ten. I think you win the Big Ten championship, things kind of fall into place. You win the Big Ten championship, then you're in that discussion for one of those 4 spots in the playoff. And then after that, you win one of those games. Now you're playing for the championship automatically. Now you're playing for the championship. And then at that point, I think you can start talking about national relevance and being a national champion. But I think you have to sit there and you have to win the Big Ten. I think going undefeated in the Big Ten or just getting to the Big Ten championship game and winning the Big Ten championship game is most important because then that sets everything up for you to be a national power. You have to win this conference though, and you have to do it consistently.
Okay, and then I know for you, part of this is sad. I know you're going to be very upset that, Brady Hoke's tenure has done.
Brady Hoke touches those kids on a daily basis. Go Blue.
I'm go Blue, baby.
But let's put a bow on it. Obviously, started off with a bang and finished with a dud. Unfortunately for Michigan, that's what happened. It was the wrong coach.
It's generally like my sex life, bro. Starts off with a bang and then just kind of
fizzles out.
Yeah.
So in the end, your overall analysis of Brady Hoke, his 1 or 2 faults that led to his ultimate demise.
I really just, you know what, you said it before with Richard. I think he was a bad fit. I think he's a great coordinator, and I think he's a great rah-rah type of guy. I just think he was a bad coaching fit. I think he said all the right things. I just don't think he had the experience or he had the tools at his disposal because it's where he's coached before. It's what he knows. It's just how he conducts business. I don't think the way he did what he was supposed to do actually worked well and fit for what this team was expecting, what this team wanted. And I think the entire landscape changed when Urban Meyer came in. All of a sudden, everything got ramped up a notch. And Mark D'Antonio was able to ramp it up. He was able to sit there and keep his team competitive when Urban Meyer came in. All right, but Brady Hoke wasn't able to do that. Brady Hoke, once this basically split and went to 2 divisions, and now you got a Big Ten championship game, and you have all this going on, Brady Hoke wasn't really able to adjust accordingly, and then Urban Meyer comes in, and now all of the Big Ten landscape is skewed because of the way Urban Meyer coaches and the things Urban Meyer does. Everybody now wants to go to Ohio State, and Mark D'Antonio was able to sit there and able to kind of ride that wave and stay afloat and keep that Michigan State program rolling strong. Brady Hoke wasn't, and you've seen it over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. A new era has now begun at Michigan, and it's time to get the right guy so that another team can be relevant to help out the other clubs in the Big Ten to become nationally relevant, because a weak Big Ten will never get a team into the Final Four. It just won't happen. All right, cuz you had a strong week. I got lucky in that we picked 2 games head to head. You got one correct, and I got the other one right. I was right that Buffalo would take down Cleveland, even though they tried to put in Manziel at the end for an ineffective Hoyer. But in the end, Buffalo won, and you were correct. The Lions spanked Chicago. So you won last week's round 3-1. I am up by 3 heading into this week.
Getting closer, bro. I need you to fail just a little bit this week.
As we speak, Doc is leading the NFL Pick'em Challenge 35-32. But just based on the schedule this week, there's no way you're going to get that much closer. So you're going to have to pull out your A game and get a lot right going forward.
Pull some rabbits out of hats here.
All right, with the first pick, got to go with Indianapolis. They're rolling. They're going to go into Cleveland, drop a lot of points. They've been starting slow lately. A lot of times I look early on, and I'm lucky this week I earned a bye in our fantasy league, so I don't have to worry too much. But he's been starting off slow, but finishing the gate strong. But my first pick, Indianapolis Colts, -3.5, crushing the Cleveland Browns.
Congratulations on winning our division and getting a bye.
Yes, sir.
My first pick, I'm going to take the Denver Broncos over the Buffalo Bills. I think this is a solid pick. I mean, you don't want to mess with Peyton Manning. Come on now. And I believe that game's at home. Let me double check the schedule here. I think Peyton's at home.
Yeah, it's at home.
And Peyton is at home. So, yeah, you don't want to mess with the Broncos.
Exactly. I highlighted that in big, huge letters. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's going to be close. I think Buffalo's defense is starting to earn some respect with that coach out there.
It's a decent product out there.
Jim Schwartz.
That Jim Schwartz guy.
And
he's a good defensive coach.
They get lots of turnovers.
Too emotional as a head
lot
coach.
Of pressure. They blitz like crazy. Buffalo has a chance if they get a little bit nasty. If they can try. I mean, Sanders has dealt with concussions. The Welker has dealt with concussion problems. if they get a little bit dirty, Buffalo has a chance to win the game. If they dirty it up a little bit, if Schwartz takes that bravado and maybe does a little stuff cheap to Manning, do they do it? But I don't think it works out in the end. I think I have to pick the same thing. Denver over Buffalo. Lock it down. I'd put a lot of money on it if I were you.
Well, that's a solid pick, seeing how I've already done that one. My second pick, I'm going to go with the New England Pats, -3 over the San Diego Chargers. I know New England lost to Green Bay, and I don't think Tom Brady's losing twice. And I honestly don't know what the San Diego Chargers are at this point. I really don't know. I know New England's going to go on the road here, but I still like the Patriots -3.5 here.
Right now, there are a few teams out in the league where you need to look who's playing them. The epic demise of the New York Jets has been surprising, especially with a coach of the quality of Rex Ryan. But when you don't have a quarterback, this is what happens. And this is what happens when you invest a lot of money in guys that aren't ready to go, and you have a backup who maybe is now ready to retire. Geno Smith and Mike Vick not cutting it. They're not playing well enough. I don't think they go on the road and defeat Minnesota the way they're playing. So with my third pick, one of my second locks, I got two locks, Denver, and my third pick and my lock of the week should be Minnesota crushing the New York Jets.
I'm on the same page as you. I like that Minnesota game. Minnesota has kind of showed me something here with Teddy Bridgewater behind center. I don't know what his ceiling is, but I think this Minnesota team looks much better than we both had expected early on in the season. I think if they had Adrian Peterson, they'd be a much more lethal contender in the NFC North right now. But I'm going Minnesota as well over the Jets. The Jets are a dumpster fire.
It's all up to the Lions and Tampa Bay. The spread opened up a little bit large. I mean, it's a reasonable 10 points. I'm inclined to take Tampa Bay, but knowing you and knowing the fact that this team is rolling at home, I think they're going to start off slow. I think my analysis is going to be that the Lions are going to start off slow, a little bit cautious versus the Tampa Bay defense. Lovie Smith does know the Lions inside and out, but the Lions have put a hurting on the Chicago Bears in the past. So with my third pick, I think that the Lions continue the momentum. I think they win by exactly 2 touchdowns, 31-17. So I'm taking, with my third pick, the Lions -10 over Tampa Bay.
I'm kind of torn here. I really want to go with the Lions just because I don't like Tampa Bay, and I think the Lions are rolling. But 10 is a huge number, and anytime there's a double-digit number, you can generally expect that team to cover. So with that said, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Bucks +10 here at home playing our Detroit Lions. I think the Lions win. I just don't think they cover. I think the Lions maybe win by 9. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay +10.
You might be coming back with these Lions here. It's good. It's a good thing that we picked the Lions game for the extra point to see what happens, and it could come down to the end. It could come down to the final few games here in our challenge. But as of now, I'm up 35-32. Hopefully, you draw closer and make this a good competition and make me step up my game. Another great podcast, cuz. Love doing these. Love chatting sports with my cousin, the Jock, Adam Strozinski. Thank you for those that support this podcast, that download it on iTunes, on Stitcher. Those of you that download it at the Detroit Sports Nation, thank you. Anywhere you can find the podcast, we greatly appreciate all the downloads. And tell a friend. If you like the show, hey, just tell one other person. And if they tell one other person, that's how we continue to grow this thing. And follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. You can get all the news related to the Detroit Sports Podcast. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Episode 69 in the books, baby.
Go Lions. I'm go blue, baby. Generally like my sex life, bro. Starts off with a bang and then just kind of
fizzles out.
Yeah. I have an issue with my penis. It's not that hard. My penis. It's not that hard. No! Oh my God! Figure it out. You can call me Freddie Tugboat. Freddie Tugboat.